I've spent the last decade of my life immersing myself in the fields of money, finance, and investing through degrees at MIT in business and economics, through working at a hedge fund, an investment bank, and now as a management consultant, and also through my own investing. So right now we're actually in one of my rental units. It's obviously under renovation right now, but through it all, I've learned how to manage my own finances. And though I'm still no expert, in this video, I'll share the investing fundamentals that I've learned over the past 10 years and 3 different investing approaches that you could take to reach your goals, including the approach that I'm using. The first fundamental investing point that I have for you today is that there's no such thing as a free lunch, or at least I haven't found one yet. So whether it's whatever asset class you invest in, whether it's real estate, mutual funds, equities, you name it, everything has an associated cost. So in real estate, they're much easier to see. There's obviously repairs or maintenance or taxes or everything else associated with owning a rental property. But for equities and mutual funds and everything else, or every other type of asset class, there's also associated costs. So mutual funds and ETFs, for example, have operational expenses that get charged to the fund's assets each year, often viewed as the net expense ratio. But the first fundamental piece is make sure you know the associated costs with each investment before making the investment. All right, the second investing fundamental that I have for you today is that there are hundreds of different types of asset classes. And by asset class, I mean groups of investments that behave similarly together. So they have the same risk and return profiles, or they have similar characteristics. So that being said, the Motley Fool has categorized these as the most common types of asset classes. They have cash and cash equivalents, which include cash, bank accounts, money market funds, and other short-term investments with high liquidity. They've also got stocks and equities, which represent ownership shares in publicly traded companies, including ETFs and mutual funds, etc. There's also bonds or fixed income, which are debt instruments issued by governments, municipalities, and corporations. And lastly, they have alternative investments, which include a mix of other asset classes like real estate, commodities, and other non-traditional alternative asset classes. All right, the third investing fundamental that I have for you today is that similar to asset classes, there are a number of different types of investment accounts. But today I'll break it down into 2 categories. So there's retirement or tax advantaged accounts, and then there's non-tax advantaged accounts. So for this first one, retirement or tax advantaged accounts, these are things like 401ks or IRAs or other accounts that give you special tax benefit. This is the government's way of supporting you on your financial freedom and financial independence journey. The second type of account are non-tax advantaged accounts. These are the classic checking account, savings account, money market fund, brokerage account, etc. So there's obviously, given the name, there's no special tax benefit to these accounts, and just about every financial firm offers these. Investing fundamental number 4 this is our last and final fundamental, and it's the idea of portfolio diversification. Diversification. Investopedia defines diversification as a risk management strategy that mixes a variety of investments within a portfolio. A diversified portfolio contains a mix of distinct asset types and investment vehicles in an attempt at limiting exposure to any single asset or risk. So ultimately, the idea here is that not only do you invest in equities, but you also invest in real estate or bonds or something else, as well as within a specific asset class. So within equities, you don't just buy Tesla, but you buy 100 other different types of stocks as well. And the overall goal in doing this is to limit your downside risk and protect your investments overall. Now that everyone's on the same page and we've gone through the 4 investing fundamentals, I'm going to walk through 3 different investing approaches that you guys could take depending on your financial objectives. And the last one is actually the approach that I use right now, today in my own life. And so I'm excited to share that with you. The first approach is something I would call the classic retirement approach. So this is for the folks that are planning to retire around 55 to 70, and maybe they want to spend their days drinking pina coladas on the beach, like this guy. The investment accounts for this approach are your tax advantage and retirement accounts. So things like 401ks and IRAs. You'll also likely have a savings account with 3 to 6 months of cash on hand in case you get into a bind. The typical asset classes that you invest in for this approach are fixed income and equities, particularly ETFs, as well as the cash in your savings account. The diversification approach is something called the 100 rule. So this is you take 100 minus your age and you get a number, and that number represents the share of your portfolio that should be invested in equities. So for example, let's say you're 20 years old. So you'll take 100 minus 20, and that'll give you 80. So the 100 rule suggests that 80% of your portfolio should be invested in equities. So in summary, for the classic retirement approach, you want to focus on and max out your retirement accounts, so your 401ks and your IRAs. You want to diversify your assets into fixed income and equities based on your age. And lastly, you want to have a good amount of cash on hand in case any life emergencies come up. The second investment approach is something I call the FIRE method. FIRE stands for Financial Independence and Retire Early. The overall goal of this approach is to retire as soon as possible. And the investment accounts that are typically used here are your non-tax advantaged accounts, particularly things like real estate accounts or other non-traditional asset accounts. So I know what you're probably thinking. Why would the FIRE approach, which has the aim of retiring as soon as possible, why would this approach not use retirement accounts? Well, the rationale here is that the typical retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs, etc., they all have severe penalties if you try to access your money before the age of 59 and a half. And so if you are using the FIRE approach and say you want to retire by the age of 35, you would have to wait an extra 24 and a half years before you could access your funds without penalty. That's why the FIRE approach opts to use non-tax advantaged accounts like real estate or other non-traditional accounts in order to achieve their financial objectives. The typical asset classes for the FIRE approach are things like real estate or REITs, which are publicly traded shares in real estate investments, basically like stocks for real estate. There's also high yield bonds or dividend paying stocks, and really any other asset that helps generate recurring income or recurring revenue each month. The diversification model for the FIRE approach is likely more concentrated than the classic retirement approach. And honestly, it's probably concentrated in a few high income generating assets. So in summary, the FIRE approach is focused on retiring as soon as possible. It does not use retirement accounts and is heavily concentrated in a few high income generating assets. And now on to our third and final investing approach for the day. And this is my favorite. This is my personal approach to investing. And so I'm going to dub it the Logan approach. But essentially here, I work first to ensure that I'm going to have a comfortable retirement later on in life. And then I apply any extra funds toward high income generating assets that will help support early financial independence. The investment accounts that I use are a 401k, IRAs, money market fund, a brokerage account, and real estate, as you're observing here. The asset classes that I invest in for my retirement accounts, I'm 100% invested in ETFs or equities. And the rationale here is that I know I won't access this money until I'm at least 59 and a half. And so I would rather maximize returns over the long term versus having more stability in the short term. Once my retirement accounts are fully maxed out, then I start to pursue high income generating assets. And so that's things like real estate. And I use the money market fund and the brokerage accounts for small returns as I save up for the next real estate purchase. Thus, my diversification is a mix of equities or ETFs in my retirement accounts. It's cash in my money market fund, and it's real estate out there in the world. So in summary, the Logan approach is first focused on ensuring a comfortable retirement later on in life. Then I focus my attention toward high income generating assets to help gain financial independence in the short term. And that's a wrap on investing fundamentals and the investment approaches that I've learned about for the past 10 years. In the comments below, I would love to hear your thoughts on my personal approach, the Logan approach, as well as any ways that you think that I can improve. Here, I'll be linking another helpful video for you to continue to learn more. Thank you. I believe in you. Adios.